people are being called upon to behave in ways that don't subvert the empire, but they do challenge the power dynamics that they were used to. Peter uses the word submit 6 times in this brief letter. Now, Peter does not tell the more dominant member of society to coercively force others into submission. Rather, he invites men and women to voluntarily submit, which is a form of humility. Humility is a virtue that Peter encourages in chapter 3 and will again in chapter 5. The submission of Christian wives is offered as a strategic form of witness. That's to say that unbelieving husbands might be, as Peter says, won over through the witness of their wives. That term, won over, it has to do with evangelism. It has to do with conversion. And it's used elsewhere in the New Testament to indicate those who might turn to follow Christ. So Peter is encouraging the women to witness, so their husbands who don't believe might be converted. Purity and reverence mentioned in verse 2 relate to previous ideas that Peter has already mentioned. Purity is a moral cleanliness, much like holiness that we saw in chapter 1. That expression, with reverence, is literally in fear. But as we've noted, that fear is not terror directed toward anyone, not even to the husbands here. But like with Peter's other references, that fear is directed toward God. It's a respect for God. The wordless witness of these Christian wives must rely more on attractive behavior than on physical appearance. Now, despite the teaching of some Christians throughout the years, Peter does not condemn cosmetics, hairdressing, jewelry, or fine clothing. However, he discourages the reliance upon such things as part of a wife's evangelistic witness. Beauty is an aspect of one's character. Peter goes on to talk about a gentle and quiet spirit here in verse 4, but that also reflects Christ-like behavior. That word translated gentle is how the Lord Jesus describes himself in Matthew's gospel. In verse 29, he says, "I am gentle and humble in heart." And that word is sometimes translated meek. It's not an indication of weakness. It's an indication of humility. The word translated as quiet is somewhat rare in the New Testament. It's used in the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint, in Isaiah 66:2, to describe those who are contrite in spirit. In other words, gentle and quiet describes someone at peace within themselves. Holy women of Israel's past are offered as models, and Sarah held a place of honor among Jewish and Christian women. Sarah gave her husband Abraham honor, calling him sir, in essence. She respected Abraham's role in society, even giving him deference. Now, Sarah's obedience is not an indication that Abraham was always right. He wasn't. And it's not an indication that women are inferior to men. They are not. It was, however, an indication of a patriarchal society. Rather than view Sarah as weak, we should view her as strong and faithful in service to God within a society dominated by men. Contemporary Christian wives are daughters of Sarah, which is to say that they become like her as they imitate her admirable character. And such character is displayed by doing what is good, the very same admonition that Peter gave to the entire community back in chapter 2, verse 15. Daughters of Sarah are also known for being fearless in the face of threats. The NIV's rendition, "do not give way to fear," translates an expression that literally reads, "not fearing anything intimidating." It may be that Peter understands how unbelieving husbands could be intimidating to Christian wives. One should not assume, however, that Peter advocates women becoming voluntary victims of abuse. The emphasis is on the active demonstration of good behavior. Christian wives are to have faith.